Hi, I'm Jeff Stiles. Let's take a little bit of a deeper look at safety margins today and answer those questions you may have always had. First of all, let's take a look at the field receipt margin added to requirement date. This is going to be impacting the difference between our delivery date and the requirement date for our planned orders. Coming over to Master Planning Workspace, we can pay attention to these two columns here. We have 3 planned production orders and 3 purchase orders. The delivery date and the requirement date are currently the same. A delivery date for a production order could be when we're actually done with it. The requirement date, however, is when we need to have it done in order to fulfill the supply. For example, with our sales order. Delivery date for a planned purchase order, of course, is when we actually get it in. The requirement date is going to be when we're actually using it. For example, if this purchase order is used as a raw material on these other planned production orders, which in this case it is. So let's move over to our coverage group, our receipt margin. Let's enter 1 day to see what it does. Save, come back here, run, full regeneration. Okay, and make sure to refresh. I like to sort the items Z to A. And now we can see a difference 1 day between our delivery date and requirement date for each planned order. There's 1 day, 1 day, 1 day. And then down here, we start getting into multiple days being skipped. What's that about? Well, let's look at our calendar. 6/20 to 6/23. Got it. Okay. So we might be receiving it on a Friday and actually using it on a Monday. Why is that occurring? Because of the work calendar that I have set up for my planning system. We're not going to be doing any work on the weekends, so why say that we need it required on the weekend? Instead, we're making sure that we require it on an actual work day. Now let's take a look at our reorder margin. The reorder margin is a little interesting, and we have a handy graphic here. So the reorder margin, we just saw the receipt margin being between that delivery date and that requirement date. But we also have the order date and start date for our reorder margin. Not as often used, but still pretty cool. The reorder margin is essentially giving us the ability to put a buffer in between the time when we need to order and when we need to start. Okay. For example, maybe we need a little extra time in order to complete the order. Maybe we have an approval process that needs to take place. That's where the buffer can come in. So let's head back over here. Our coverage group. Let's turn that off. Let's put a 0 in that receipt. And in the reorder, let's stick a 1. Save it. Master planning. Run. Full regeneration. Awesome. Make sure to refresh. Z to A on that item number. Okay. Now we can see that difference between the order date and the start date. Previously, these were pretty similar, just like our delivery date and requirement date. But now we can see that the order date has about 1 day, 1 day between the order date and the start date. So the system's telling us, hey, this is when we need to order it, and this is when we need to start it. If you need an extra day or some time between when you actually are notified of needing to order and when to start, this is a handy buffer to have. Not often used, but good to have. Let's move back over now to our coverage group. Let's get rid of that and add 1 to our issue margin. Issue margin. So the issue margin is going to be our supplies requirement date and our demands requirement date. Okay, so like a sales order, production order. We'll see here that this buffer is probably one of the most useful because it's essentially going to shift back all of our dates in order to give some extra room to meet that requirement date, that goal date that's coming from our demand. And here we can see that the order date, start date, delivery date, requirement date is all shifted back now. Okay. And how can we double check that? Well, remember, this is an issue. This is a difference between our supplies requirement date and our demands requirement date. Now, the demands requirement date is often a request date. And so we can come back to our master planning, choose one of our planned production orders, and we can see that we have a requirement date for this pegged sales order of 7/23, but its request date is 7/24. That's the buffer right there. We can even dig into this. See that, yes, indeed, that requested receipt date is 7/24, but we're planning to get this done a day ahead of time. All right, thanks for watching. That's a little bit about safety margins and how they're going to impact our planned orders downstream. Make sure to check back here for more tips later on. See you then.